When I first moved into Willow Creek Estates, I thought I had found my forever home. The streets were lined with maple trees that turned gold every autumn, neighbors waved while jogging, and the air always smelled faintly of cut grass and lavender. I wanted peace, a place to breathe after years of renting in noisy apartments. For a while, that's exactly what I got. Until I met Gloria Whitmore, the HOA President. Gloria was one of those women who wrapped venom in velvet, always smiling, always composed, always making you feel like you'd done something wrong just by existing. The first time she came to my door, it was about my mailbox. "Sweetheart," she said, leaning against the post, "the color doesn't match the neighborhood standard." I blinked. "It's white." She smiled wider. "Yes, but not our white. Ours is soft pearl. Yours is a little too bright." I laughed, thinking she was joking. She wasn't. 2 days later, I got a notice. $75 fine for unauthorized paint color. That was the beginning. Over the next few months, I started collecting fines like trading cards. $100 for lawn edging not uniform. $50 for excessive seasonal decorations. All because I put out 2 pumpkins instead of 1. The most ridiculous? A $150 violation for unapproved garden gnome placement. She claimed it was distracting to the neighborhood aesthetic. I thought maybe she just didn't like me. I tried to play nice, complimented her rose garden, smiled at her during morning walks. She'd wave back sweetly, then send another violation notice the next day. It became a pattern. Her smile meant trouble was coming. At first, I paid the fines. I didn't want conflict. I was new, single, still finding my footing. But when I realized the violations only came to me, not the guy next door with weeds growing waist-high, or the woman across the street whose dog barked all night, something snapped. I decided to keep every letter, every email, every petty citation. My breaking point came one afternoon in May. I came home from work to find a bright orange notice taped to my front door. Final warning. Property in violation. Unauthorized exterior modifications. Fine $500. The so-called modification? I'd replaced my porch light with an energy-saving LED bulb. Gloria's note underneath read, "We maintain a warm neighborhood aesthetic. Your lighting is too cold-toned." I sat on my steps and laughed until tears came. Then I stopped laughing and started planning. The next HOA meeting was scheduled for the following Thursday. They usually held them in the clubhouse, a space that looked more like a suburban courtroom. A long table at the front for the board, rows of chairs for residents, and Gloria sitting in the middle like a monarch. I decided I'd be ready for her this time. I spent the weekend going through every document I'd received. Out of curiosity, I checked the HOA bylaws online. What I found was worse than I expected. Half the fines she'd issued weren't even legitimate. She'd cited rules that didn't exist or twisted clauses to suit her whims. Then I went deeper. Through the HOA's public records, I found the annual budget reports. Let's just say the math didn't add up. Thousands of dollars in miscellaneous maintenance and administrative expenses that led straight back to her. Landscaping contracts awarded to her brother's company, payments to a design consultant who turned out to be her niece. Every receipt, every email, every screenshot, I saved them all. But I needed one more thing, proof that she knew what she was doing was wrong. That came unexpectedly. On Tuesday evening, I was taking out the trash when I heard voices near the side of my house. Gloria and another board member, Denise, were walking by. I ducked behind my car. I know, it sounds childish, but something about Gloria's tone made me freeze. "She's too naive to fight back," Gloria was saying. "If she complains, we'll say it's standard enforcement. And between you and me, those fines keep our reserve fund healthy. Nobody checks the details." Denise chuckled. "You're ruthless." Gloria laughed, that brittle, polished sound that made my skin crawl. "Ruthless keeps order, dear." I held up my phone, hit record, and captured every word. By Thursday, I had everything I needed. I barely slept the night before, running through what I'd say, what might go wrong. But when morning came, I felt strangely calm. That evening, I walked into the clubhouse 10 minutes early. The room buzzed with chatter, residents flipping through papers, sipping coffee, gossiping about lawn care and neighborhood watch. Gloria stood at the front, her signature coral blazer and pearl necklace gleaming under the lights. She spotted me, smiled like we were old friends. "Marie, lovely to see you. Here to discuss your recent violations?" I smiled back, something like that. The meeting started with the usual agenda: maintenance updates, landscaping budgets, new community rules. Gloria ran through them with practiced authority. Every sentence started with, "As your HOA President," or "Under my leadership." I sat quietly, waiting for the resident concerns portion, the open floor where members could address issues. When she finally said, "Any resident comments?" I raised my hand. She looked almost pleased. "Of course, sweetheart. Go ahead." I stood. "I'd like to discuss the recent fines issued to my property, specifically their legality under HOA regulations." The room shifted. People murmured. Gloria's smile tightened. "I assure you, all fines are within our community standards. Then perhaps you can explain why my LED porch light violates Section 4.2, when that section doesn't exist in the bylaws." A flicker of irritation crossed her face. "You must be mistaken." "I'm not." I opened my folder, pulling out printed pages. Here's the full HOA bylaw document. No mention of lighting tone restrictions. Here's also a list of all violations issued to my address, 10 in total over the last 6 months. Curiously, no other resident has received more than one. The whispers grew louder. Gloria's jaw tightened. "We enforce equally, Marie. If you're implying bias, I'm implying corruption." You could hear a pin drop. I set my laptop on the table, connecting it to the projector. The screen lit up with a spreadsheet, line items from the HOA's financial report. Here's something else I noticed. Payments to Whitmore Landscaping, owned by your brother, if I'm not mistaken, and consulting fees to Bright Designs LLC, registered under your niece. Color drained from her face. "Those are approved vendors." "Approved by whom?" I asked. "You?" The tension was thick enough to taste. She tried to speak, but I wasn't finished. I clicked again and played the audio recording. Her voice filled the room. "If she complains, we'll say it's standard enforcement. And between you and me, those fines keep our reserve fund healthy. Nobody checks the details." A collective gasp swept through the room. Someone muttered, "Unbelievable." Another voice, "Did she just admit to pocketing fines?" Gloria's hand trembled. "This is an invasion of privacy," she snapped. "This," I said, "is accountability." The vice president of the HOA, a quiet man named Jeff, stood up. "I think we've heard enough." He turned to the crowd. "Motion to remove Gloria Whitmore as HOA president, effective immediately." Every hand went up, unanimously. Gloria stared at me, stunned. For the first time, she had no words. She grabbed her folder and stormed out. The door slammed so hard the blinds rattled. I stood there, heart pounding, as people began clapping, actually clapping. A woman I'd never spoken to hugged me. "Thank you," she whispered. "We've all been scared to speak up." The following week, the board held a special session to review the finances. Turns out, Gloria had been funneling HOA money for years, small amounts here and there, enough to avoid suspicion, but large enough to matter. They reported her to the county. Word spread fast. Within a month, her house was up for sale. The new HOA president, Jeff, asked if I'd consider joining the board. I laughed. After all that? No thanks. I'll just keep my porch light. But I did attend meetings, not out of obligation, but because I finally felt part of a community instead of a target. One evening, about 2 months later, I came home to find a small envelope in my mailbox. No return address. Inside was a note, written in elegant cursive: "You may have won this round, sweetheart, but remember, Power always finds its way back. No signature, but I didn't need one. I smiled, tore the note in half, and dropped it in the trash. Because the thing about people like Gloria, they mistake fear for respect. And once you stop fearing them, they lose everything. A few weeks later, Jeff organized a neighborhood barbecue to celebrate transparency. Families gathered, kids ran around with sparklers, and the air smelled of grilled burgers and freedom. Someone turned up the music, and for the first time since moving in, Willow Creek actually felt alive. As I stood under the string lights, watching everyone laugh and talk, I realized revenge doesn't always have to be loud or cruel. Sometimes it's just the truth, shining bright and cold like a porch light that refuses to dim. Later that night, I sat on my front steps, sipping iced tea, the soft glow of my too bright LED light illuminating the walkway. Across the street, Gloria's old house was dark, the for sale sign creaking in the wind. I took a deep breath, feeling the peace I'd wanted all along finally return. It's funny, all I ever wanted was to belong. Turns out, I did. I just had to burn a little hypocrisy down to see the light. You've just stepped into her revenge side, where every wound finds its justice, and every silence ends with truth. If her story struck a chord, make sure to like, share, and subscribe. Your support keeps these stories alive. Another secret waits in the next video. See how her revenge begins.